Hello everyone, welcome to the continuation of this series. In today's series, we're going to be looking at talent in AI. And this is a series where we've been looking at the State of AI report that's available, that was done by Ian and Nathan Binesh. So we're going to bring over the report on the screen here for a second. So this is the report, State of AI 2019. We're reviewing this report and we're dissecting it piece by piece to see some of the main areas in which Nathan Binesh and Ian Hogarth talked about as far as AI is concerned. So today's focus will be around talent, the supply, demand, concentration of talent working in the field of AI. And this is something that is very, very exciting. I think I'm especially passionate about this piece of it, and I'm really looking forward to covering the content that is in this report and having some discussions around it. So in the previous video, we talked about research and spent a lot of time going through and analyzing the research that has been done in AI. So now we're really going to switch gears and focus on the report. Now, I'm going to take that aside. Before we get started, I have the presentation available on the screen here that Nathan and Ian put together. So I'm going to be going through this again just on the talent. But I just want to call out something. In the previous sessions, what I would typically do is I would, have some presentation before and then dive into this report, into evaluating this report. But I think I want to do it the other way around. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the slides here. Luckily for talent, there is way fewer slides than there was for research. So, but we're going to be covering them and I'm going to make some commentary over them. But at the end, once I'm done through that, I'm going to switch over and do, I have some couple of slides and presentations. You might call it presentations, you might call it rant or my opinion or certain things about the field. I feel that, there's more to be said about talent when it comes to AI than just numbers. And so there are certain opinions that we can have on that in that field, and I really want to express some of them. Because we get into the field. Talent is critical. Without talent, AI doesn't exist at all. And so to me, this is one of the most fundamental things that there is to talk about. And we gotta give it due diligence in the discussions, right? Without talent, there is no research. Without talent, there's no industry. Without talent, there is no politics. We cannot make any predictions. There's nothing to really talk about, right? Because at the end of the day, people have to dedicate their time to do this, and that's the talent, right? So let's get started before I get into my rant, but let's put that rant for the end. And in this session here, we're going to be looking at what Ian and Nathan presented for us. Now, the first thing that we see here is they go straight right into talking about some of the top organizations, and what this does is it measures the productivity of research papers that these top organizations are putting out, and that's very exciting to see. Google is way up there, of course. Google is a very intensive research organization, right? Everything from AlphaGo and even with big data, they're doing a lot of things. Hadoop was on Google, so they are really up there when it comes to I think not just publishing papers, but really being a very strong engineering and research organization. So I'm not very surprised to see Google holding the top spot and staying there from 2017 to 2018. And I'll be surprised if they don't continue with that trend going into 2019 or 20 and such, right? And then of course you have MIT, Stanford, CMU, and Berkeley. This is fascinating, right? Because this is really the marriage between academia and industry, right? You're seeing a lot of academia in there, and you're seeing industry in there. Well, of course, we don't see the Microsoft, the AWS, and Amazon's in here, so that's a little bit surprising to me. But at a quick glance, this really tells us that research is not just being done in academia, right? By professors sitting in schools and in labs, but that people in the industry, albeit they might be focused on research and not just necessarily building consumer products, but still they are in the industry and producing a lot of papers, which is fascinating to see. at the very least. So you can see the list. Of course, my MIT came up here, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Stanford is rising up, and CMU seems to have gone down, and Berkeley stayed in the same position. I wish this list was a little bit longer, so that we can see where everybody falls, maybe like to 10 or 20 to just get a good idea. But there you have it. Google is way up there in terms of the numbers of research papers that they are producing. Now, one of the things that we need to talk about is what you notice is you're gonna see some acronyms that are here, and I'm gonna be talking about these acronyms, right? Like neuro IPS and some of those things. What do they mean? So neuro IPS is literally a conference, and I'm gonna bring this on the screen here. So it's a conference that stands for Neuro Information Processing Systems, right? Neuro Information Processing Systems. So they have a lot of conferences, and so if you're seeing that Google continues its dominance at Neuro IPS, so this is a conference that was held in 2018. And so I'm gonna talk about conferences as we go down, but just to call it out for those of you that are interested in the field, you might start bookmarking some of these conferences. This is where the best of the best go to do their presentations or to talk about their papers, and it's really fascinating to see. And you can see the conference here, the electronic proceedings. Actually, I haven't read every single one of them, but you can see that this has been going for a while. So this is not just something that came up recent, right? Let's take a look at 2018. It just takes a minute for this to load. All right, so 2018, you can see there's a lot of paper, efficient algorithms for non-convex isotonic regression through submodular optimization. Wow, I have no idea what that's talking about, but it sounds cool. It sounds cool. Francis back, and so yeah, you can see the papers in there, and hopefully you can see the PDF. Interesting. All right, I think I'll let you guys that really want to geek into this to dive a little bit deeper and see the papers for yourself. But I think this is fascinating, especially if you really want to stay on the cutting edge of things. I think these papers are worth reading. Just really a ton of them. I'm just scrolling down to see if anything stands to me. Academic papers usually are kind of very cryptic in terms of the way they write them. So pessimistic limits and possibilities of margin-based losses in semi-supervised learning. Wow, that's a lot of papers. I mean, this is something that if you're really into the field, especially on the bleeding edge, and something to definitely pay attention to. All right, that said, we're going to continue the conversation around talent. So I'm going to move that over to the side of the screen. So the next thing that we're going to look at from the research papers is a continuation of it. Is they talked about 88% of 4,000 researchers who published papers in that same journal that we talked about, ICML and ICLR, were men, right? Yeah, so you can really see that it's kind of skewed across the different countries. So Taiwan seems to have more diversity from a gender perspective, more than you're looking at like Sweden, which they didn't seem to have published 0% women. Wow. Sweden, guys, you need to step up your game and bring some diversity in there. So you have Finland all the way towards the United States. The US is there below the average. All right, so still 88%. That's I don't know where that compares to into the average for just career in terms of men versus women, but you think that there are 50%, about 50% men, 50% women from a gender perspective in the population. So you might really hope to see this somewhere close to that. But again, we know that STEM has usually kind of skews towards men. But nonetheless, I think it's interesting to see this publication, and might be a wake-up call for the countries that are listed here to start thinking about ways of making this number a little bit more equitable. So but before we leave this page, I want to call out a couple of things here. So we've seen the Neuro IPS, which is that organization for the publication of papers that relates to AI. So that's the Neural Information Processing Systems. The next one, that the ICML, this is the website icml.cc, and that one stands for what it stands for is International Conference on Machine Learning, right? So the International Conference on Machine Learning. I believe this one was held already. We can see the date. Yep, Sunday, June 9 through the 15th of 2019. So this is gone, guys. If you're gonna attend this, you might want to look at the one coming up for 2020. But again, I'm sure this is where they talk a lot about publications and just an organization on machine learning. So this might be something to bookmark and maybe put on your calendar if you're hoping to attend. So let's take a look at attend. Well, of course, this will be for 2019, so you might not be attending this. Let's see if 2020 is out yet. I know that's 2015. Let's do a drop down. All right, so I don't see that, but again, you can always browse around this and find some contacts information and reach out. Maybe you're trying to publish a paper you've been working on, or you just want to attend or send someone in your team to go attend and learn about machine learning. That might be something worth doing. Now the next one so this is the International Conference on Machine Learning. The other conference, which is the ICLR, and I'm going to bring that on the screen here, is the International Conference, of course, on, let's just bring this to the screen here really quick, the International Conference on Learning Representations. So you have the International Conference on Machine Learning and the International Conference on Learning Representations. Again, this was in May, so it's just passed a little bit in New Orleans in the United States. And these are the people there. Videos, we've posted videos for many. Let's see where the videos are. Right, so maybe you didn't attend the conference, but you wanted to see the videos. So these are the videos of the different talks. So let's see, it says indexed video token. It just takes a minute here to load. All right, get it. Let's see if we can bring up this video. So there you have it. So it seems like you can actually go in, even if you weren't able to attend some of these conferences, go in and watch some of the speakers speaking. I believe this has been indexed, so there might be, there you go. So it's been indexed. Phrase cloud and the table of contents. So you can see what he was talking about here, talking about instability at scale. Well, I'll let you guys go in and dive into this, but it seems like you can't quite read the screen here, but it says next year's ICLR on learning representations is going to be in Addis major ML conference in Africa. So it might be in Addis Ababa. That might seem like that's what it says here, but I'm not sure, guys. You might have to look more on the side and check it out to see exactly where that would be. All right, so now we've talked about what we've talked about is really looking into these research papers. The next thing that we can see here, so we've seen the Neuro IPS, the ICML, the ICR. If you want to attend those conferences, guys, definitely check those out. Now, the next thing from a talent perspective is about compensation. This blew me away, right? Because of course they have to put a headline here where the compensation is approaching $1 million US dollars, guys. That's a lot of money to be paid, and I'm guessing that this is the average per individuals. But you can see that it kind of ranges from, and this is what I would expect, right? 100,000 to just under 200,000, and the more senior you are, which is I believe that this is a seniority scale going out here, then the more you tend to make, right? So the senior folks might be making upward of 200,000 while the junior or entry level folks might be making just around 100,000 or more. And of course, depending on the company you work for, you have your base salary and stocks. Again, not every company gives stocks, but for the ones that do, especially with the startups and some of this giant techs, your Google, Amazon, Facebook, GAFA, so Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple kind of companies that might want to reward talent with stocks. So you see that can really balloon out, especially at the senior level. So imagine being the AI person at some startup whose business model depend on you delivering on some AI solution, right? They're gonna be giving you a ton of stocks, not just to keep you, but to make sure that they can attract the best candidates for that. So I'm not very surprised that we were seeing this year. And then of course you can tack on bonus on that, which is the yellow color from that perspective. So interesting to see. People usually don't work for charity, right? Most people get into AI because they want to get jobs. They got bills to pay. They have lives to live, right? And money in the society in which we live in, and compensation is needed for the work people do. And if AI is out there and the talent are out there doing amazing work and doing breakthroughs, so it just has to make sense that the compensation for that should be reflective of the effort that goes into it, right? Understanding machine learning and building those models is no trivial task, and that's why companies will pay top dollar for their top talent to keep the organization going and running. Now, the next thing that we see here from a talent perspective, at the other end of the spectrum, there is a huge growth. This was interesting to me. $1.47 an hour for labeling data. Guys, if you've done machine learning before, or if you've worked in that capacity, you understand that one of the biggest challenges usually is not just around even building the model itself. Usually the challenge is around collecting that data, cleaning the data, structuring the data to make it ready for your model. And that could be very time consuming and intensive, right? That you're talking about some good data integration coming into play. But more importantly, not just even data integration, you might, if you're doing supervised learning where you need labeled data sets, usually you don't get data sets in the real world that are labeled. So somebody might have to go in and manually label those data sets so that your machine learning model could be trained against, right? And so that could be I just call it bicycle work, right? Or desk work, where you're just labeling data. It's not really doing anything different. And so what we're seeing here is that companies are sending some of this offshore. They're hiring folks offshore. I believe this is what it's talking about, for them, or freelancers to go in and label that data. I was even reading something the other day where it talked about folks leveraging. Amazon has a service called the Mechanical Turk. I don't have the link open. Let me just go ahead and search it on this other screen here. Mechanical Turk, where researchers, and it was said that some researchers from, I believe it was Microsoft or Google, leveraged the Mechanical Turk to label their data on one research that they were doing, which was just kind of fascinating to me. But basically, Mechanical Turk is where, I'm going to bring this up. I wouldn't talk too much about it, but it's a service where you can go outsource some work that needs to be done to labor, and you can, some of them are offshore, and then you can pay them really cheap. And so this is where I see, again, I wouldn't go into the Mechanical Turk. That's not really what this conversation is about today, but just to give you an idea, so we're seeing creative ways for people to partake in the labor pool as far as AI and machine learning is concerned. So, and one of the things I really want to talk about that some folks might say, but paying $11, or not $11 here, $1.47 an hour labeling data, that's unfair, right? That's below the minimum wage and such. My goal in this video, of course, is not to make my opinions or go into the politics of what happens, but to some people in the world, this amount of money is really people that are living on $1 a day, right? Paying somebody an hour could be very life transforming, right? And even if that means for them just to label data, they might really want to do that work and still contribute valuable skills to the whole ecosystem of AI. So I wouldn't necessarily just write this off and ignore this as irrelevant to the discussion, just because, yeah, this lady or whoever is doing this work gets paid and is working in AI, right? If you want to say that, quote unquote, that they're working in AI. And so this is a transformation where the industry doesn't just affect the elite, right? The smart mathematicians or the gurus or the programmers that know how to code. There is synergy there, right? Where we have to, everybody, and even people that don't necessarily have the degrees from MIT or Stanford or PhDs or advanced degree can still partake into that booming industry of artificial intelligence. So this particularly caught my attention. 20,000 freelancers working labeling data. That's a lot, right? This is 20,000 people who have a job, because often than not, we always say AI is going to take away people's job, and there's that skit around AI taking away people's job. So this kind of tells us that maybe it's not just one dimensional, right? Maybe there is more to that than we've been led to believe. But anyways, I think that really makes a point here. I would encourage you guys to maybe look around this a little bit more and educate yourself, depending on where your inclinations are. You might have one opinion or another, but my goal here is to just report on what we see and just have some honest conversation around it. Now, the next thing that we look at, or the next couple of slides that we'll look at, this one talks about these three gentlemen, right? They almost call them the godfathers of machine learning. If you talk about machine learning in many circles, sooner or later you come across either all three of them or one of them, or or in them in some combination. So right in the middle of the screen here is Geoffrey Hinton. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then you have Joshua Bengio right here, and then of course you have the great Jan LeCun. So these are some of the folks that have really been pioneers in the field of AI and machine learning. Like I said, they call them the godfather of it. And interestingly, they I think what this is talking about is they won the Turing Award, which is the highest award in computer science. As a matter of fact, let me bring that up on the screen so we can take a look at the Turing Award that was awarded to these three gentlemen for their amazing work in the field of machine learning. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit about Jan LeCun, because I've been reading a little bit about him and watching some videos about his background. So these are the gentlemen. So Geoffrey Hinton, Jan LeCun, I can't really pronounce that correctly, and Joshua Bengio. So the fathers of deep learning, I think that's a name for them. So they were awarded the Turing Award for the work that they did. So just a little bit about, you can read more about these guys. I usually like to get an idea of the background, by just reading about people like this, right? And just understanding where they come from. I think it's such an amazing technology that I'm looking. Some days I was reading a book about deep neural network, and I'm looking at forward propagation and back propagation, and I was just having a headache all day, and then I was saying to myself, if I'm reading something that somebody's explaining to me in a book that should make sense, and I'm still having a headache, I just wonder, the kind of brains that these people that were actually inventing this stuff, what kind of brains they have, right? They seem to be on a whole different level in terms of their aptitude. So just a lot of respect and kudos to them. Jan LeCun in particular, a French, it sounds like a French name. I believe he has a French origin, Montreal. He might stay in Montreal, Canada, I believe. And most of these guys have either stayed in Canada, spent time in Canada or such. We know Canada really has a very strong and booming AI industry going out there. So cool to see. But LeCun, at one point in his industry, when he worked in the industry, he was saying, because he seems to be the father of the convolutional neural network, the one for image for image recognition and such. So in one of his works, he he was doing this presentation, and it just seemed like, people did not think that the CNN would go anywhere, and he just had to believe. He said, I wish I had that video. I would like include the video in my link so you can read about it. He just said he had a belief that it would work. And for like 10 years or so, everything just kind of was, they call it the AI winter. No one really believed it until it came back on around 2012, where people really started picking up and seeing the power of the CNN, when he really started working on this back in like 1994. But it didn't really take up until like 2012 or so. And just imagine the belief and the conviction you have to keep pursuing an idea, even though some people thought it was a dead end. And eventually he said, well, it just needed more compute power and more data for it to work. And then eventually so spend some time, read about these folks. I'm always just inspired to go out and read about what these guys are able to do. I think that they really help move humanity forward with the things that they've accomplished. All right. And there might be a movie on them. I'll be surprised if somebody doesn't go out and make a movie on either one or all of these guys. I know for sure there is a movie on, or some documentary on Geoffrey Hinton that I was watching. Yoshua Benjo, I haven't seen something on him, but I believe there should be something coming up. I'll be surprised if there isn't on these guys. All right. The next thing that we'll look at is from a geographic perspective. So what we see here, the publication talking about is that Europe publishes the most AI papers. So this surprised me a little bit. Europe publishes the most AI papers. That's pretty impressive to see. But only China's average citation rate is growing. So what this means is, Europe is publishing a lot of papers, but China's citation rate is growing. Well, it might mean that China is publishing more impactful papers. So this is how I read it. China is publishing more impactful papers, whereas in terms of volume, Europe is leading the way. But China's level of publication is still less than Europe, right? And you can see that by looking at the graphs here. So you can see China, I believe China is the one in red. It's still down there, but you can see it ticked up a little bit and it's kind of flattening. And then I believe this is Europe, all the European countries. And of course the US is just way up there in terms of it, right? Now, field weighted citation impact. So the citation impact for China is growing, and the US is up there. But let's look at the annual published AI papers on Scopus by region. So you can see Europe is there, and China is there, and the United States is here too as well. And you can see that over time. So very, very interesting to see these numbers, as well. So let's go on to the next slide here. So the next one talks about the new 1 billion investment in computing and AI at MIT. So this is, I alluded to this in the previous video that I made, where Steven Schwartzman donated some money to MIT for them to invest in the AI curriculum, and to really develop the AI in curriculum at MIT and transform that to make it into a leading organization from that capacity. So Steven Schwartzman, he is the founder of Blackstone Capital. He's a CEO. Well, I don't know if he's necessarily the founder, but for sure he's the CEO of Blackstone Capital. For those of you that are curious, Blackstone is an investment group in the United States with over, as of their website, which I have on the screen here, over 512 billion in assets under management, right, as of March 2019. So it's this is a big company. And of course, he talked about this is the MIT Schwarzman College of Computing. I believe this is actually coming from the money he donated there for MIT. So let's take a quick look at that. But what we're seeing is that the US and philanthropists like this are really realizing that the future belongs to AI, and to stay at the leading edge, right? The US as a whole really has to be a leader in this space, and that starts from academia. That starts from having the right infrastructure for education, so that kids are going to school and they're learning, and they're getting the necessary skills, and not necessarily struggling or falling behind, what might be happening in China or in some other places around the world. So for those of you that are interested, you can go ahead and read the article to see what's going on. It's fairly new, October 15, 2018. So there you go. Some investments are happening there with Schwarzman making that big investment. Hopefully this inspires other people with a lot of money and money in their accounts to step up and contribute as well. All right. It says aiming to train bilingual students who can apply ML disciplines like biology, chemistry, and linguistics. So, University of Virginia follows suit with. You can read this. I usually don't like to read everything verbatim on the screen, but you can get an idea, right? That this is really, gonna spur a lot of universities to really invest and reprioritize where they spend money, and making sure that AI is a priority in their budget and in their expenditures. And the whole goal again is to not be lagging behind China. So I think this is a motivation for a lot of companies or a lot of these philanthropies that we see. Now the next piece here, university course enrollment in AI is growing. It's growing, particularly in China. We know China is investing a lot in AI. We saw that the impact of their publications are high or is growing, and so that this is not really a surprise to me. Again, this is a chart that shows some of the top universities, and you're seeing the growth in terms of the enrollment for students that are taking AI. Wow, this one is a spike here. I wonder what this one is. So Tsinghua University. All right, and this is growth in AI plus ML course enrollment. Right, that's fascinating. You can see there's really that amazing growth. So compared to 2012, 16 times more Tsinghua and 5 times more Stanford students enroll in AI courses. To me, no surprise, right? I've always said I'm of the belief that at some point AI is gonna become basic knowledge. That just like we know how to count, to read, and write, we're gonna have to just have some basic understanding of AI in order to function in the society in an effective manner. And the sooner we start realizing that and making sure that we educate the future generations on the concepts, right? Not everybody needs to be an AI programmer, right? But just having those functional and operating knowledge of the concepts, I think, will go a long way to help everybody. Now, the next piece talks about diversity, gender diversity of AI professors, right? And the main theme here being is still far off from being on equal footing. So let's take a look at this. On average, 80% of AI professors are men and 75% of undergraduate students are men. So that's a lot, and this is not surprising when you look at the publications that we saw a little bit earlier. I think it was around 80%. Let's actually take a look. Right, 88% even, right? So if you have a lot of people that are publishing papers being more men, then professors tend to publish a lot of papers. So I'm not surprised with that correlation there between those publications and seeing more men in the industry. So in this diagram here, this graph, so Stanford and Berkeley, again, you see more men enrolling in programs than women, right? And if this is the case, then the cycle is just going to continue. So hopefully this trends in a different direction as we look into the future. All right, next piece here talks about 71% of male-dominated AI applicants in the pool. So again, this is it's a cycle, right? If the people publishing are men and the people enrolling are men, then you just see that the people that are applying for jobs are going to be men. So not too surprising to me seeing this. So again, like I mentioned, hopefully this trends into the right direction, and organizations and companies can really equip and or institutions and schools can equip and bring in practices to enroll more diverse pool, and so that hopefully this funnel is not very skewed the way we say it to be skewed here. But this is interesting. The areas of specialization: more men in speech, and then more women. Actually, that's not correct. Let's just take a look at this. So as a percentage, you have a lot of women in deep learning compared to speech recognition, which that's surprising to me. I would have thought it would be the other way around. But interesting numbers. And this is from Gartner, the talent neuron, which seems to be one of their publications. I wouldn't share it. I have it, but I wouldn't share it on the screen here just because Gartner is a paid service. Now, the next piece is Element AI. And I believe Joshua Benjo works for Element AI. I might be wrong, but I believe he works there. So they did a talent survey. A review of papers at 21 machine learning conferences, by almost 22,000 unique authors. Only 19% of the academic authors and 16% in the industry were women, right? Again, really seeing the fact that there is a lot of gender inequality when it comes to AI as far as women are concerned. Let me open up something here on the screen really quick. So Element AI talent survey, and I wanted to just bring up Element AI on the screen so we can take a look at it. It's an AI organization. I'm not 100% what they do. Work to smarter together with AI. So let's see. They have a few clients, Paul Montreal. So that sounds like they're in Canada. All right. So this is the founder, JF. I don't know who that is, but what kind of partners do they have? I want to see that. NVIDIA, Microsoft. Upney, Intel builders, AWS. That's interesting. And what kind of research are they doing? So their fundamental research and applied research team works together, build products to solve real world business problems. Yeah, it's a little bit kind of a vague description here, but let me check one last thing here before we leave from Element AI. So that's the founder. All right, so oh, there you go. This is what I was looking for. So this is Joshua Benjo. So one of those the AI gods, right? Godfathers of AI. So he seems like he has some affiliation with this Element AI company. That's what I thought. I thought I saw something somewhere, and I just could not quickly find it back on your website. But anyway, so they did that research, and 44% of authors earned PhDs from US, 11% from China, and 6% from the UK. So while the US seems to be high up there from a publication perspective and publication perspective. So 5 countries, US, UK, Canada, accounted for the employment of 72% of authors. Wow. So, just these top 5 countries, right? US, UK, China, Germany, and Canada account for 72% of employment of 72% of the authors. I would maybe have thought this would be the employment of 72% of AI professionals. That's what I would have seen here, which would have been interesting, surprising, but nonetheless interesting fact to see the AI really spreading across the world and such. Now the next piece here is plotting countries by their flow and inflow of AI talent, right? Canada, the UK, and Switzerland both attract foreign talent and export locally trained talent. The US-China ecosystem are more mature, and they see low inflows and outflow of talent. So the US is somewhere here. Where is China? China is here, right? So what this means is talent, when they come to the US, of course, they stay, right? But not a lot of people are invited. So invite less talent. So less people come into the US, but they stay more It might be due to immigration policies. Not really sure about that. Of course, Japan is way out there, less coming, and they stay even longer, right? Then you have countries like Switzerland, which are here. They invite a lot of people, right? But they leave as soon as they come there for some reason. And then, you can kind of really see where each country falls on the map. Canada is somewhere here. They invite more talent, but that talent tends to leave. But they invite less than Switzerland. So you can just go ahead and see what that means in there for each country. And I would believe that what we see here is really a reflection of the policies of the country. I would imagine that's the case. Maybe the policy of the countries, or just the cultural situation of the country that might make people want to stay or leave once they're there, right? Because people don't just work in a vacuum, right? You work, but then you have life around you, and if things are good, people tend to stay. But if it's a place where people don't want to stay, then they will leave. So there's a little bit more context that could be provided around this. Now, the next piece talks about the hiring trend of AI into companies is slowing down. I couldn't read this article. I think it's paid a little bit by Kevin McClellan. So the frenzy is slowing down. Interesting to see. I'm not sure what data is there to back this up. If we're seeing growth in enrollment into by students into academia to do AI programs, we're seeing the publications are growing, then I'm surprised that the hiring is slowing down. What does that really tell us, right? So what they're saying here is that likely a sign that businesses need talent to bring applied research to production. Well, if they need that, right, they should be growing. So I really don't have a lot of context around this article, but interesting nonetheless for that to be included. So guys, we've gone through this. We've seen a quick overview of the industry. Some of the big themes there is lack of diversity in terms of women in the workforce, and as well as in the research side of things and publications and such. Different countries have different inclinations and positions in terms of when it comes to the ability to attract, retain top talent, invite, attract, retain top talent for the countries. And then here we're closing this with the fact that AI there's a hiring freeze, or the hiring seems to have settled down. So those are just some high level themes to think about. Now, what this paper did not really show us, and this is where I'm going to switch over in a little bit to conclude this presentation. And once I do it, next session will be around industry. So to conclude this presentation, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring over my slides on the screen here, and we'll talk about, and maybe this might be feedback for Ian and Nathan to hopefully, it might be that they don't have the data, but let's see if they can consider including this in their future research, or pointing us to some resources around that. And what we want to talk about is talent. Talent is a very nuanced topic, right? As we've seen, it's not easy. It's very nuanced. It's very complicated, right? Hiring, you're thinking about diversity, you're thinking about a lot of things, right? Because you're dealing with human beings, and human beings are complex. Right? And once you start going into workforce, not just the laws and the regulations, but a lot of things comes into play in terms of passion, in terms of fulfillment, in terms of a lot of things. And I'm going to cover a lot of that. And so when we look at numbers without context, I feel that it could really be misleading, right? Because life doesn't exist in a vacuum. And I really want to urge every one of us to say, can we go beyond the numbers? Can we think beyond those numbers? Sure. The reason why people are in AI and machine learning is because they love numbers, right? We want to always calculate, measure KPIs, everything, right? And talk about how many papers are being published, right? How many people are being hired. Sure, that's great, but what about retention, right? Those people that are being hired, how long do they stay at the jobs, right? What's the wellness? What does it feel like to work in AI, right? If you're in AI, can you transfer those skills, right? If something happens, can you quickly adapt and get new skills, right? What is the job fit for people who get into AI? So do they even love their jobs, or is there a high turnover? No one talks about it. We can see the hiring rate being biased, which is what we saw, or we can see that the hiring rate is growing, right? Or we can see that the last person said that the hiring rate was slowing down. Sure, we agree. But then what about the people themselves? What about the critical factors within talent, which is persons, people? We're talking about individuals here. We're not just talking about numbers. And I feel that we can, quickly get into this rabbit hole of seeing everything as numbers and bar graphs and charts, forgetting that we're dealing with people. And if we're not talking about attrition, turnover, job satisfaction, growth, right? How the kid going to college and majoring in IT, what's gonna become of them? Are they just gonna crank out models and feel fulfilled about your lives? I don't want this to be going into, like I said, it was gonna be a rant into some philosophical kind of thing, but those are things that are very important as we think about maturing this industry into an industry that not only moves humanity forward, but also makes sure that the quality of life and the people that are working within are rewarded well and feel satisfied and fulfilled with the job that they do. And those are some of the things that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides here. So one of the things that really comes into mind is that if you choose a job that you love and choose a job that you love and you will never work a day in your life. Confucius said this many thousand years ago in China, and I usually share this with people that reach out to me, because I happen to be in a position where I get people that reach out, they want to get a job, they're looking at changing their careers, they're seeing that things are hard, things are booming, people are making a lot of money in the field, which we saw, right, 100,000 plus up to, $1 million. That could change the life of a lot of people, right? The average median income in the United States, I'm not sure about Europe or Canada or some other places, but in the United States, it's about 50,000 or even less than that, 48,000, right, depending on the year and maybe inflation, right? So if the median income, the average income for a family is 48,000, 50,000 or so, and you're talking about an individual getting a job making 100,000, 150, 200,000, and some being compensated $1 million per year, that's a lot of money. And so it's not surprising that a lot of people are standing on the sideline and they want to get into this frenzy. They want to get in and be part of this, right? But the question is, we also have to think about, are people just getting in there? Are people getting in for the right reasons, or are people just getting in there because money is being flashed in their faces? And that's really what I want to caution everybody as we're having these conversations, to be frank and to be honest with everybody, that if you love this, if this is what you care about and you want to add value to companies, to organizations, sure, this is going to be great, right? And you work in a field where you don't even feel like you're working because of the value, right? I talked about watching a little bit of a video about LiteCoin, and where he talks about doing his research. He was in Canada and then he came to the US, I believe. I don't know if it was for IBM or some other company in the US. I might have to check what company it was he was talking about. And he said, he was doing this research and it was going nowhere. And he had something that was taken to production. And then the company got split. And, this idea of convolutional neural network seemed like it hit a dead end and it wasn't really being adopted, right? That's back in like 1994. And it wasn't until about 2012 before this thing really picked up, and then his fame started growing. And now in 2019, he wins the Nobel Prize, right, for computer science. So, if he was just in for the money, or he was in just for the reward, I don't think he'll be putting in the effort that he did. So you gotta have to think about, are you in for the right reason? Doing what you love, guys. You have to work a day in your life, and this is something that we have to keep reminding, that let's get out of just being robots and let's think in terms of human beings and more than that, right? The next thing that I also want to see here is another statistics that said some 55% of US human resources managers said artificial intelligence, or AI, would be a regular part of their work within the next 5 years, according to a 2017 report or survey, right, by the talent firm Career Builder. So that's 55% of human resources saying that they're going to be using AI as part of the hiring, right? And this really, it's easy to look at this number and just kind of maybe miss the subtlety of what it actually means, right? So the human resources are going to be using AI to hire people to build the AI systems that will be used by human resources to hire AI people to build the AI system. I mean, can you see how interesting that is, right? Of course, human resources don't just hire AI folks. They don't. They hire, almost everybody in the organization. But still, that's fascinating if you think about it, right? Like, like the mind. People always talk about the mind. Like, we're using our minds to try to understand how our minds work, right? And how real or how good can we get at that? So this is just fascinating for me to see. And looking at this, it comes with this intrinsic biases, and I can share a lot of articles as I was kind of going through for conversations around this. So one of them, if you really want to, I would bring a couple of articles here to the screen, and I'll recommend that you go out and check those articles more in detail for yourself. And once we start talking about bringing AI into hiring, then we start talking about bias. We start talking about, should we really trust machines to be doing such a critical thing that should really be human driven? That's why it said human resources. It's not machine resources. It's not AI resources, right? It's human. And so if we're now going to say human resources are throwing away that critical part of what it means to be a human resource, what are we doing, right? Where are we going? And what does that mean for everybody? So this is an article on Verge. You can go ahead and check it out. This was in January. The next frontier in hiring is AI driven, right? So very interesting. The one that I want us to talk about is something around Amazon. Apparently, Amazon was embarking on a project where they were trying to build systems that would leverage AI for the hiring process. And then there was some bias in that system, and then they scrapped that project as quickly as they started it, right? So Amazon scraps secret AI recruiting tool that showed bias against women. And if you think about AI systems, some people say we don't even know how they work, right? And now you're gonna take that and make decisions and train that on data sets that might have been biased, and so you're just gonna use this biased data set to build bias systems that will just propagate the bias, because they will create more biased data in production, and then we're gonna use that data. And so this can just really get out of control pretty quickly here if you really think about it. For this particular article, one of the things that I wanted to call about, again, I'll share these articles, but you can go read them for yourself. This is where it talks about the 55%, right? This is where we're looking at that quote, 55% of human resources are looking at using AI for their recruiting, right? And then if you look at how AI is going to pass resumes, so think about, let's step back for a second and think about the hiring process. So you want to get a job, you write a resume, you go to a job website, and you apply. You apply to the job. Your resume is written, and you submit that. You click a couple of check boxes. Now, instead of a human being looking at this, what happens here is they want machines to look at it and analyze the text in the way your resume is written, find keywords and things like that, right? But what we see here, I think this is one of the things that it talks about, is the way a man maybe could write, or the language in which you write, or let's say you're not very good at English and writing a description of your job, but you're qualified for the job, right? The machine is just not even analyzing you at that time. It's just analyzing, a representation of you, which might or might not be correct, right? I know some people out there would say, but you should write better and fix your resume in that case, right? But guys, I have, in my career, I've met people, or I've hired or worked with people that are the best of the best, right? These are people that know what they're doing, but but they're not good salespeople. They cannot write good resumes on themselves, right? But if you talk to them, sure, they can really talk about. So my point is, human resource professionals have to be creative, right? Machines will certainly augment. They have a role to play, but I'm not of the school of thought that machines would be the panacea, that machines would solve all the problems, or make everything easy breezy for professionals in the field. So go ahead, check this article for yourself, guys. Read that. That's one of the articles that I came across that I thought was was interesting. There is one more that I can show, some thought-provoking quotes. Again, I can leave the links and resources below. This is a little bit older, about AI in recruiting, AI in HR. So there was one that actually stood out. Let's see. All right, there's something that actually stood out to me. I can identify it here. But again, I'll leave the link below for you guys to go out and read some of these quotes. They're fascinating, right? As hiring professionals adopt intelligence, how will recruiting evolve? You use AI to get rid of the things that a recruiter does that aren't efficient, right? So this seems to be a little bit more optimistic. The US Army seems to be using AI and automated chatbot, right? So chatbots, I'll just let you guys go ahead and read some of these things and form your own opinions, and be sure to share those opinions as well. Do you think that this makes sense? Is this where the industry really should be going, right? Or are companies just getting in over their head with building all these systems to do recruiting and such? All right, now the next thing that we want to look at here, and have some conversation around, is 52%. And this is a quote: 52% of talent acquisition leaders say the hardest part of recruiting is screening candidates from a large pool. Right? We know that the average job gets about 20 or 30 applications, depending on the job and the location and skill level, pay and such. But usually you don't get one job with one candidate. You get a job and a bunch of candidates applying for that job. And so the question is, how do you screen effectively to find the right candidates? And we know, if in machine learning and AI, typically is good at screening. That's why they were used successfully for spam filtering, right? They can look at an email and say this is spam, this is not. But when you're talking about humans, are they really that effective? Are humans really that discreet, where you can just use machine to filter and say you're good for this job or you're not good for that job? So a lot of people are trying to use this, right? And it goes back to resume. They're looking at your resume, they're finding keywords, and they're looking at your work history, they're finding those keywords, and supposedly this machine should know you enough to say, wow, you're a good fit for the company or not, right? To me, I feel that really relying on machines and such is kind of abdication of work. Like, people don't want to do the hard effort of connecting and being human and interviewing people and having a conversation for them, right? If you're gonna bring a human being to work at your company, and this person will be spending 8 hours, 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, right? Months and years on end with you and members of your team and your organization, and interacting and going for coffee and having lunch and all those things, right? That's inherently human. And to really base all that decision on machines making that, to me, might be a little bit flawed or naive or misleading at the very best. So definitely something to think about as this field evolves, and something to keep an eye on as well. So guys, that said, this is the couple of things that I really wanted to talk about and share, right? And then I also wanted to share a couple of things, right? And this is not meant to brag or such, but I've been in a position where I've been very fortunate to work and coach, and that's why you see Coach Fru Louis on my channel there. People getting into the field, and they need a hand holding, they need some advice. And to me, that's all human, right? That's all human. I can't say, well, I'm gonna wake up in the morning and write a chatbot that would, anybody that reaches to me, I'll just, have them talk to this chatbot, and this chatbot should represent me, right? Would that really achieve the goal? I don't know. Some people might want to do that, but I feel like, we gotta keep things human. So these are some of the messages that I've gotten, people thanking me for getting jobs, right? For having conversations like this, for taking this report and spending time to break it down, right? I wrote a book and people are getting some value out of it on Amazon, right? So this to me, these are all humans. Machines did not send this to me, right? So these are all humans, interactions and touch. And I think that we should keep when it comes to talent, my proposition is that we should keep it as human as possible, because otherwise we cannot get things like this, right? If this was coming from a chatbot, I don't think I would value it as much as it comes from humans, and talent is inherently human. So the next thing that we're gonna talk about here is and I think I'm going to end at that piece where we're talking about being able to keep things human, and just to understand that, you know, at the end of the day, you know, IT, you know, if it's not helping humans and advances humans, could really be tough to swallow. So let's go back really quick to the presentation on the talent pool, and this might, I hope, I know these guys have done an amazing job already. So it's kind of tough asking more from them. But guys, I hope that Nathan and Ian, and I believe they're all on LinkedIn, I'm sure, or Twitter, right? I hope that they, after watching this, they might consider, you know, really expanding a little bit on their talent section, and having some more conversations around that. It might be a little bit nuanced. I know it's kind of difficult conversation sometimes when you talk about talent, but I think that is worth having it, just so that we can position the industry or the field in which we are in for success long term. All right, guys, thanks for watching. This was a great video to make. The next video that we have coming up would be equally as exciting, as what we'll do is we're gonna leave talent and we're gonna dive and start talking about industry. So industry is, bear with me, industry is what we have coming up next. We'll talk about large platforms, financings, area of applications of AI, right? What do we see AI doing, and some of the innovations that are happening today, and some of the innovations that we see happening tomorrow. So there's a lot of great content in the slides that Ian and Nathan provided. We're going to be breaking that down, and I'm going to be sharing some of my opinions around that as well. All right, thanks for watching. So be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching this video, as the next couple of sections are going to be very, very exciting to watch. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.